We are a quarter of the way through the NFL season, and the jury is still out on the Cincinnati Bengals. They've looked horrible through the first 4 weeks of the NFL season, going 1-3, and only putting up 3 points twice in a game. And one of those times came against the Tennessee Titans, who have been a horrible team through the first 3 weeks of the NFL season leading up to this game. They also put up only 3 points against the Cleveland Browns, a divisional opponent, in week 1. And while this is a little bit more understandable than only putting up 3 on the Titans, with the Browns having guys like Myles Garrett, it's still unacceptable for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. They've only gone over 20 points in a game once, and that was in a 27-24 loss to the Baltimore Ravens, another divisional opponent. So far, they're 0-2 in their own division, and as of right now, they are sitting They're sitting last in their own division. Even the Steelers have won 2 games, and they have a lot of work to do to get back into the playoff hunt. Even in a division such as the AFC South, where everyone is expected to be bad, every single team in that division has a better record than the Cincinnati Bengals. Right now, the Bengals are actually tied for last in the entire conference. And for a team that had Super Bowl ambitions coming into this season, this is not a good look. Joe Burrow has only put up 728 yards, averaging well under 200 yards passing per game, and only thrown 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. This past week against Tennessee, he was 20 of 30 for 165 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions. While he did avoid the big mistake in throwing a pick, he just wasn't spectacular and wasn't even solid, and that showed with him only throwing for 165 yards and the Bengals putting up only 3 points. While T. Higgins did go out of the game early, this is still no excuse with Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, and Jamar Chase, an all-pro wide receiver and a top 3 receiver in the game, in this same offense as him. And while not all the blame is on Joe Burrow, he has to shoulder some responsibility, as this offense just has not gotten going this season yet. There has just been something off with this offense as a whole, as they are only averaging 12.25 points per game, and Jamar Chase is only averaging 9.8 yards per carry. This is so concerning because one of the biggest catalysts to this offense's success has been Jamar Chase taking a slant, which is supposed to only go for maybe a first down or something, and taking it to the house for a 75-yard touchdown. We've seen games where Jamar has put up 200 yards or 150 yards consistently, and I've thought that actually this season he was going to rival Justin Jefferson for the top spot in the receiver hierarchy this season, statistically at least. And this year he just has not had the same season I expected him to have. In all honesty, he only has had 1 good game. This last week he had 7 catches for 73 yards, but he just didn't have the same impact that we're used to him having. He had a good week last week against the Rams on Monday Night Football with 12 catches for 141 yards, and that gave me some optimism for this team, and I thought they were going to be able to bounce back, but then they come out and put up only 3 points against a weak Tennessee Titans defense this past week. They have the Cardinals this next week on Sunday, but even this Cardinals team, who has beat the Dallas Cowboys, is no easy task for the Bengals, who have been struggling. And then after the Cardinals, they have the Seahawks, 49ers, and Bills, which that 3-game stretch is the toughest of their entire season. So they need to turn up and actually figure out what's going on and figure some things out before that 3-game stretch. They have their bye in the middle right after the Seahawks game, but even so, if they can get out of these next 2 weeks with 2 wins, I'll be surprised, because the Seahawks are a very solid opponent and the Cardinals are definitely a trap game for them. The Bengals defense is also not holding up their end of the bargain. This last week against Tennessee, a Tennessee offense who has struggled. Derrick Henry last week only had under 30 rushing yards, and he went off for 122 yards, a touchdown, and a passing touchdown this last week. And while that is normal Derrick Henry behavior, he hasn't been the same Derrick Henry this season that we've seen in years past. So it's concerning that the Bengals are the team to give up a lot of yards to him initially. So we'll have to see kind of how the rest of the season goes with this team. But in the next weeks coming up are not easy games. You have Arizona, which can be a tune-up game, but then you have Seattle, you have San Francisco, and you have the Bills, all of which should be good games if the Bengals play up to their potential, but all have the potential to be blowouts as well if the Bengals continue to be playing the way that they have been recently. Jamar Chase needs to step up, Joe Burrow needs to step up, and T. Higgins needs to get back to being healthy. Because if the Bengals offense can start producing like the way that they need to be a playoff team, this team is just going to continue to spiral. Because the offense is the catalyst that makes this team go, and Joe Burrow is the catalyst that makes the offense go. So if Joe Burrow can't figure out what to do in the next couple of weeks here, this is going to be a long season for Bengals fans and the Bengals organization. Another concern for the Bengals offense through the first 4 weeks of the NFL season has been their lack of a rushing game. And Joe Mixon, who has been a 1,000-yard rusher in the past and is a very solid running back, hasn't been able to get more than 67 yards on the ground yet in the game. He's averaging around 3.5 to 4 yards a carry, which isn't terrible when you look at it from the outside perspective. But when you are averaging only 3.5 to 4 yards a carry and getting only about 13 carries a game as a lead back for a championship contending team, or a team who at least wants to be a championship contender, it's not acceptable, because the run game is always what stimulates an offense. And if you don't have a feared running game, and if your star running back isn't being able to produce the way that he normally produces, it makes your offense very one-dimensional, and the defense can key in on the passing game, which they've been able to do, and teams have been able to take away Joe Burrow and the passing offense. So the lack of the running game is actually affecting the Bengals more than you might think. In the past, when the passing game has been able to go, if you told me that Joe Mixon only had 67 yards, I might say, oh yeah, because Joe Burrow had 350 yards, Jamar Chase had 175 of them, and they're good to go because they didn't need the running game. Now, when they're leaning on the running game more heavily because of their lack of a passing game, the running game is still faltering, and he hasn't been able to pick up the load of the passing offense. So they need to figure something out quick, because the upcoming schedule is tough, and if they don't get things turned around quick, this is going to be a long season, and they don't have a lot of opportunities to go on a big long win streak, so they have to be able to beat some tough opponents to get back into the playoff mix. I'm someone who enjoys watching the Bengals play, and I want to see them succeed, but as of right now, I don't have a lot of faith in them, just because of their last few games and how much they've struggled. Offensively and defensively, they gave up 122 yards to Derrick Henry, who just hasn't been the same this year, and they allowed Ryan Tannehill to play very, very well against them. And if this isn't a sign of dysfunctional defense, I don't know what is. Ryan Tannehill was able to throw 18 of 25 for 240 yards and a touchdown and a pick. Now, that may not seem that amazing, but for Ryan Tannehill, who has struggled this season, that's an above-average game. He just threw for a 72% completion rate, whereas in other games, he just hasn't been able to get anything going whatsoever, and there was talks of benching him. But after this game against the Bengals, those talks have kind of subsided, because he was able to kind of pick apart this defense en route to a 27-3 victory. So we'll have to see where the Bengals go from here. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made within this organization and by the front office as well, because this is a team that was expecting to compete for a championship, and right now it's at the very bottom of the AFC North and of the AFC. So we'll have to see kind of what happens throughout the rest of the season and how the Bengals figure out to fix this whole mess that they've gotten themselves into. God bless you all. I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by next April.